There are pieces of art that are so good, so widely beloved by fans and recognized as such by people even outside of its sphere of influence, they eventually seem to transcend our current plane of reality and take on an almost ethereal existence. One where, even though future pieces of comparable art may have surpassed it in some way since, the influence it had during its period of relevance and the quality it maintains keeps it untouchable. In the world of video games, Silent Hill 2 is one of them. Bloober Team's remake is right over the horizon, but the general opinion gives off more of a hello human resources vibe than one of excitement. And instead of jumping out the window like everybody else seems to be doing, I think we're being given a perfect opportunity to not only set expectations for what this remake could end up being, but an even better opportunity to look back and come to terms with what Silent Hill 2 actually is. Firstly, I think we have to get rid of this sentiment that this game doesn't need a remake, and also come to terms with the fact that Silent Hill as a franchise is the definition of blood wrung from a stone. I played Silent Hill 2 for the first time a couple years back, and I never once thought that I didn't get something out of it that maybe I would have gotten back in the day. It's one of the best games I've ever played, and I absolutely believe it deserves its spot on the ethereal plane. But I grew up with the 5th and 6th generation of consoles, so I think I can, at the very least, tolerate systems or control schemes that seem archaic to others who can't, and appreciate the intentions of the people making those games at the time that they did. Do I think that everyone inherently deserves to experience a game or a story with gameplay and a design language they don't understand or find too difficult? Not really, but from a money standpoint, I think Konami was chomping at the fucking bit to make one of their best titles something that modern audiences could work with. The over-the-shoulder perspective is one of the most obvious choices the developers could have made. Silent Hill has always been, or at least tried to be a competitor to Resident Evil, and the success of Capcom's remakes has, whether you like it or not, put Silent Hill 2 in this position. Just like PT inspired the direction of the first-person Resident Evil games that followed, and even Bloober's own games. I don't think the direction the game took is an issue, but I do think the team making it justifies some of the wariness that I've seen. I haven't played any Bloober games. Silent Hill 2 will be my first one, but I do know that they don't have the shiniest track record. It seems like nobody can really agree on the quality of any of their games, so I understand the hesitation people felt when they found out Bloober was behind it.
Okay.
But I'm also hesitant to write off a studio that's getting a chance to make a game in a franchise their other games were directly inspired from, while also under the supervision of some of the original creators. I can't say that Konami cares about this franchise like a Nintendo does with Metroid, but if Mercury Steam can do it, then I don't see why Bloober can't pull it off either. The overreactions to the most recent trailer still has me blown away. According to Twitter, we were shown a build from around a year ago, and even then there's some genuinely questionable things in there, like the lack of real griminess in the environments and the really bad sound effects. But to say it looks like a fan game or an Unreal asset jumble, just some of these comments.
I know what you are.
What do you mean? RIP radio static. It's there. It's literally right there. I could be wrong, and the game could obviously turn out horrible. But from what they've just shown us, and from what we already know, it's really falling right within my expectations. The original Silent Hill 2 sits on such a high pedestal, to where I think we've hit a point where none of us could all agree on what the remake should actually be. Any settled on direction would be met with hate, even if it was one-to-one with the original, which brings me to my other point. Like I said before, Silent Hill 2 is one of the best games I've ever played, which means it has less flaws than most games, but they do still exist. What's difficult about critiquing it is, one, this game is visibly crafted with so much heart and soul, it's just difficult for me to be hard on it. And two, the fact that most of these so-called flaws could just be a result of the time period it was made in, or whether or not certain executions could be made with the intention of increasing immersion or tying the gameplay further into the story. The combat kinda sucks, but you could say it was a limitation derived from the perspective in camera work or limited technology afforded to Team Silent at the time. Or you could say that it's supposed to be that way because James Sunderland is a normal guy with no knowledge of guns or killing or anything, and that combat was designed around those details to heighten tension and fear. Even though I had no real challenge adapting to how the camera works, it's a very 6th gen camera system for sure, and that means it's not great by modern standards. Anyone could say that the fixed camera angles and the lack of control when you do have it is disorienting and ups the vibes, bro, but I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I think the one real problem I have with it is its general lack of direction with progression, especially in the level design. Hitting X on every single door to see if it's locked or not, and sometimes several times over depending on if you have a map or not, isn't the most fun way to explore an area. A lot of puzzles don't give you enough information to grasp the concept of them. There's nothing inherently wrong with being lost in a game, but a lot of the time, Silent Hill 2 doesn't make you feel like you figured something out when you finally get back on track. It just makes me feel like I missed something that should have been a little more obvious. All in all, I don't think the original is all that perfect, but when I listen to people talk about it, or when I watch old trailers, or listen to the soundtrack on my drives home from work late at night, I almost forget that I ever feel that way. It elicits emotions from me that most modern games I play today never have, and I can't discredit that. But I also think the idea that it doesn't need a remake is a little silly. I also think that we should give a little more grace to the people creating it. I'm not saying we should wait until the game comes out to make judgments on its quality. That's ridiculous. We don't have to exactly trust the process, but I want to see a little more than 3 minutes of this 10-hour game before I write it off entirely. There are pieces of art that are so good, so widely beloved by fans and recognized as such by people outside of its sphere of influence. They eventually seem to transcend our current plane of reality and take on an almost ethereal existence. One where, even though future pieces of comparable art may have surpassed it in some way since, the influence it had during its period of relevance and the quality it maintains keeps it untouchable. In the world of video games, Silent Hill 2 is one of them.
Just hanging out.
Have you seen a little girl around here? Short, black hair, 7 years old?